Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Mike from MOBOXgraphics.com, and in this video tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to use After Effects to create this really cool just kind of water droplet effect. I saw it in somebody's show reel and it looked really cool, and I wanted to challenge myself to see if I can recreate it, and it's actually pretty simple. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So here we are in After Effects. I'm just going to create a background, layer, new, solid. This green color looks good, but I'm going to make it a little bit darker, and then I'm going to lock the layer. So I actually drew this faucet in Illustrator, so I'm just going to drag it in, and to make it stand out a little bit, I'm just going to search for an effect called Drop Shadow and drag it right on the faucet and just kind of increase the softness just a tad, just so it kind of stands out from the background. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the anchor point to about the center of it. That way the water droplet falls out just in the center. I'm going to hit S on the keyboard. I'm just going to scale it down a tad and bring it up. Okay, so our faucet is basically done. Now it's time to just draw the water droplet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up and go to grid, and that'll give me a nice grid, so that way I could easily draw a water droplet with pretty good symmetry. So coming up here to the pen tool, I am going to click and hold, and that will give me these bezier handles. And then down at the bottom I'm going to click and hold, and then I'm going to go and circle it around and making sure I click and hold. So now I can just grab the pointer tool and start kind of messing with the geometry. If you double click it, it allows you to then grab the points like that, and I'm just going to line them up and make them look nice and center. Let me make sure. Okay, I did it once before and my After Effects is kind of lagging, so I just wanted to make sure that wasn't lagging it. But while I'm here, I should probably save the composition so I don't make it crash like I did last time, just in case. So from here, I am just going to shrink these bezier handles in pretty close, and make these maybe more flat. Something kind of like that. And from here I can actually just add two more bezier handles. If you grab the pen tool, you then click on the outside, and now I got some more that I can just hold shift and drag in to kind of give it a more water droplet look. All right, so that already looks pretty good. I'm just going to center up the anchor point, pressing Y on the keyboard and just dragging it up to the top. Shall I drag it? Well, it doesn't matter. The top is fine. And I'm just going to drag this to the center of the composition, and right there is about good. I can just go ahead and get rid of my grid, and I kind of not in love with how flat the bottom is, so I'm just going to bring these bezier handles in a tad, and they don't have to be absolutely perfect. So from here, I'm going to just hit S on the keyboard and scale this droplet down until I think it looks appropriately sized, which that looks good. And now we're ready to start animating. So I'm just going to move it up here, and maybe at 15 keyframes, I'm going to place a position keyframe. Actually, while I'm here, I'm just going to right click and rename this to droplet. If that's how you spell droplet, it's probably not, so I'm just going to rename it to drop so I don't look like an idiot for the next 5 minutes. And so I want the droplet to kind of, I should probably move my timeline. I want the water droplet to come about here and kind of slow down before falling to about here and splashing. So does that look good? Maybe move that up. Hit J on the keyboard to bounce back to my other keyframes, and I'm just going to move this whole thing up just a tad. So I made my same mistake again. Just going to move that keyframe over. Want this to kind of peek out before it drops. So if I select these keyframes, I can go ahead and open the graph editor, selecting all of them. If I come here and select Easy Ease, and I'll kind of give you an idea of how I want this motion to go, but first I'll draw the curves. So I want it to kind of ease down and then slowly drop, kind of accelerate down before splatting right about there. So let's see what that looks like. So I think it's a little bit slow. So I'm just going to bring these together more. So that looks pretty good. Select them all, hold Alt, and maybe even drag them in a tad bit more. And I'm just going to extend this out because I want the water droplet to kind of sit there for a second before completely falling through. Maybe make this a little bit farther down. I think I'm going to mess with these just a tad bit more in the graph editor. I think for this one, it's pretty extreme. So let's see if I can't make that a little less extreme. There we go. So I think that looks pretty good. I'm just going to scale it down just a little bit more. Again, S on the keyboard. And I'm just going to add a slight another effect here. I'm going to create a shape layer, an ellipse, and I'm going to drag it just about there. Center up the anchor point, Y on the keyboard. And what this is going to act as is basically kind of like the water droplet kind of sticking to the top of the faucet. So what I'm going to want to see here is that about this point, by the way, S on the keyboard for scale. Let me move it up a tad. I want the scale to be about there. And I want it to basically, I'm going to uncheck this constrain properties. That way I can move it in, I could stretch it in the X and Y independently. Otherwise they would be linked. And at here, I want to make this a little bit longer and make the X direction 0. So let's see what that looks like. I'm gonna want to do something like that. There's something kind of goofy going on with these keyframes. I can't move that over. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm just going to move the faucet on top of these layers just so we can kind of see what that looks like. So it does seem to get a little bit ahead of itself. Should probably be ending about there. And I could have done this via this layer, via paths, but I think that that's a little bit easier to understand. So I don't think there's any other animation needing to be done there. Now all we need to do is make the splat for when this hits the ground. So just before, one keyframe before, is when we're going to start the motion. So I'm going to make a rectangle and draw a box. just below the shape. So I'm going to make this a black color. Press T on the keyboard, bring up the transparency, and I'm going to use this as a guide. So this is going to be my floor, basically. So just selecting all these, pressing U on the keyboard. I don't need to see all of these objects. And while I'm here, I should probably rename this to drop added, just because it's the second drop. So it impacts just about here. So what I'm going to do is on this drop, I'm going to open it up, go to Contents, Shape, Path, and set a path keyframe. And so basically what this path keyframe will allow me to do is change the time, and if it will let me, move this shape to the bottom and lock it so I don't keep grabbing it. So basically I can change the shape through time. But there's not quite enough information here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the pen tool out again, J on the keyboard to my last keyframe on path, and I'm just going to add a ton of extra points here. The more points, the more, quote, resolution I'll have to do my hand animation. And if you did this ahead of time, the only problem is that getting a perfect water droplet with all of these points would have been very difficult. And you may not need this many points. In fact, I may not need this many points, but it's a good place to start. Okay, so I just moved this down just a little bit, just so I have a little bit more room, and I think that this would be a good place to start. So I'm just going to open up this path here, and you can see there are tons and tons of little dots. So to make my life easier and to make the tutorial easier, I'm just going to drag some of these dots down, especially the ones that are just being completely unused, which are the ones at the bottom. So I'm just going to drag a couple down, just kind of get them out of the way here. As to not confuse us anymore. And I'm going to be using this black box as a track mat, so don't worry, anything below this will not be visible. Okay, so now we're ready to cause the impact of this water droplet. So I'm just going to drag a couple of these over, kind of give them a little bit of a gradient there, so it looks like the water's kind of splashing. And kind of just little waves. By the way, I am about as good at hand animating as I am at being a professional basketball player. So keep that in mind when you're doing this, so that way you know that it is challenging. I'm just kidding. It means that I'm bad. It means that I'm bad at it. So we kind of have the first impact, and now we can kind of keep adding some more hand animations here. Just kind of making sure that, the difficult part about it is knowing the timing, right? So each keyframe has a specific amount of time in between it, and the hard part about hand animating is that you don't really know how much time has elapsed in your head, because you're looking at points in time as opposed to time moving. So it's like, well, was there enough time in between those two actions? Was there too much time? How fast did it go? And those are all things that the more you animate, the better you'll get. It's something that I'm still not very good at, to be completely honest. I think I want to keep that one there, bring this one down, it's challenging, to be honest. It's simply, it's not easy to hand animate or to know kind of where things should be at what point in time. So I'm jumping a little bit of a few keyframes ahead, only to just kind of try to understand where things are with respect to time. So now what I'm doing is basically making these kind of start splashing the other direction, if that makes any sense, which it probably didn't, but that's okay. You'll know what I mean in a sec. So bringing these down. Okay, so I just probably sped up a bunch of time. I had a really difficult time hand animating this, but basically what I've come to is something that looks like this. Let me turn off motion blur. And so it impacts, very simple. A couple keyframes later, only 2 keyframes, it kind of has some outward momentum, and then it kind of dissipates as it's causing curls kind of that way, only to be finished, which I'll probably delete that and kind of make these kind of something that looks kind of like more like that, just so it kind of looks like this has dissipated. See what that looks like. Seems like right here there's a lot of open air, which we don't want. So that looks fine. All right. So now what I'll show you what I mean by having this bottom layer covering the top. So I'll go over the drop. I'll actually go over both the drop added also. Put the drop above the drop added. Switch this mode to alpha inverted matte. And now you have something that looks kind of like this. So fairly simple. You can add some more effect to this. So for example, at impact, you can have I'm going to close all these layers so they don't get in the way. You know, little water droplets as well. Making sure the anchor point is centered. Scaling it. Rotating it to kind of match. I'm going to put it down here. And P on the keyboard, S on the keyboard, U on the keyboard, and kind of have it launch out. I'm also going to put R on the keyboard, so it will scale to 0. Maybe I'll have it start at a little bit bigger scale here. So now I can just duplicate this a couple times, pressing U on the keyboard for all of them, so I can kind of see where they're all going. This one I'll probably have go over here. Be like that. Maybe, and I'll have this one kind of go straight up. Start at a much larger scale. Rotate it to 0. Kind of have it, make it do kind of a straight path. Rotate to maybe -100, just so it kind of has a splash to it. And it just kind of adds just a little touch. Almost not even existent. So I'm just going to extend these out. Just kind of like that. So now that I have all of these water droplets, I'm going to put them all together by just selecting all of the droplets, including the top droplet, Control-Shift-C, and name this water. So that is the whole water droplet. And now none of those little circles should be visible, which they are. And that's because I accidentally added that shape layer to the whole thing, which should be there. So let me not select that, Control-Shift-C. And now let's try this again. Okay, it just looks like these shapes here are starting a bit too high. So I'm just going to select these, bring the position down, just so they're not visible. And yeah, that looks pretty good. Just one last effect, roughen edges. The big part that you want to see is up at the top, because that's kind of where roughen edges will play its biggest role. It's a little bit crazy. We decrease it a tad, increase the scale. As to maintain most of the correct animation. It's just to kind of roughen the, or not rough, well yeah, roughen the edges just a little bit to make them look a little bit cleaner. So now I should probably go Effect Generate Fill on this and make it, I guess I can make it blood, but I should probably make it just water. Pretty simple, I know, but it was hand animated and it did take an hour to do. Probably less for you, but yeah, I hope you did enjoy this. I hope you learned a couple things about hand animating. If only that it's extremely difficult and takes an extremely long amount of time. So anyways guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, be sure to subscribe, like the video, share with your friends, And let me know for future videos in the comments down below if you have any suggestions, but be sure to check out MOBOXgraphics.com for all the latest news and information regarding tutorials. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching.